Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to take a look at some creative ways you can use masking with a few shortcuts to create more dynamic animated GT titles. But before we get there, as always, if you have any comments, any questions, just post them below in whatever Facebook or YouTube that you're watching on, and we'll try to get to them live here on the show. Also, if you would like to join us here on the show, we do have a link below in the show notes, and somebody from the studio would be happy to get you on, and we can chat live. Okay, so let's get started. One of the things, since we covered vMix 28, took a first look at some of the features of the new beta of vMix 28, a whole section that wasn't really touched, at least not at this point, was anything with GT titles. So a lot of the limitations around what you can do with animated graphics those limitations are still there. You can't just put a video file in or do video elements that are part natively of your GT title. So what I want to cover on today's show is a way to use some other elements externally combined with elements in GT title itself to create something that can be a lot more dynamic on screen. So what I'd like to do to start is let me show you what I have here. So if we look at the output from here, this is just a Christmas scene. So we figure we'll keep with the holiday theme here. And so what I wanted to be able to do was create a title that had all of these different elements on it, where you had sort of the flashing lights around the outside. In the Christmas bulb, you have sort of a little thing of Santa, going through gifts and checking his list or whatever. So we put this all together, and when I pull it off, you'll notice that the animated elements, like especially the lights, that all slides out with it. So, but it stays there. It doesn't like go away and then the animation ends. It actually stays there through the entire animation out, and it all closes out. So that's what we're going to talk about, how we did and some of the techniques we used to do that. So let me see. Want to see if we have any comments up. The comments thing was closed here. So just give me a second. There we go. All right. So yes, we do have some comments. So Tom, great. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Hopefully this gives you something you can leverage here. So, Michael, always good to see you. Thank you. So, at Otazas, hopefully I said that correctly, Otazas 360 Play. Thank you for joining. Definitely appreciate it. And Dave, always good to see you, Dave. Welcome from New Jersey. So, all right then. So the place I'd like to start as we go through this is actually let's go into GT title, and I'll talk a bit about what I've done there, and then we can circle back and show how all this folds into the preset for vMix. So this is basically what you saw on screen, minus all of the video elements that we added. And this is broken up into different layers, and we leverage these layers in two different ways. So let me start with the first obvious way. So we have this Christmas ornament bulb here. We have this element here as a background that slides out to then put a text element on top of this. So those are the three basic elements. If you look over here, we call them the slide layer, the bulb layer, and the text layer. So those are the three layers that we have here with the elements. The slide layer uses pretty standard animation. So if you come over to what we have for the slide layer, so let me sort of click here, you can see that the slide layer actually sort of crops right here at the edge of the bulb. And we do that specifically so that the slide layer can slide out from sort of inside the bulb here. And we are doing that with, you come over to animations here, and if I pick the slide itself, you can see that I have a transition in, which is just a fly in from the left to the right. And for transition out, we just do the reverse. We turn around and say just fly back out, and because it knows it's an out transition, it flies it to the left again. So that is basically sort of the very simple animation that we have here. And then we have the text layer, and the only thing the text layer is the full screen. It doesn't need to come in because this is sort of a fade in. So you can see what we have here for the transition in, we do a reveal to start. So when it slides out, it waits a second for that slide to get out, and then it does the text reveal for the Happy Holidays text that I have here. And then when we transition out, we just go and we fade this out, and we do a very quick fade so it gets off the screen as we're closing everything up. So that is sort of the main title, but we're doing something else here. And if you look under, we have another element that right now isn't showing, which is called the mask element. And so the way I've structured this is that using the same basic title, I have two aspects to it. One is the visual graphical elements, and the other are the mask elements. So if I want to create a mask is typically a grayscale set of values. And those values are black means it is totally transparent. Well, let me put it this way. Black means that you don't see anything under it, and white means that you can see through that into the object below it when you have a mask. And the gradients between those, so everything's sort of like the 255, 0 to 255, that gives you that gradient. That just does higher levels of transparency or opacity till you sort of to fill in the edges. So what I'm doing here, so let me sort of come back and show you this. If I turn off the graphical elements and I turn on the mask elements, what you see here is a mask that I'm using to mirror sort of the basic outline of the slide out, but that is also animated. And one of the cool things that you can actually do is you can use animations in GT title as masks. It doesn't care. So you can take any input as a mask in vMix. So what I've done here is sort of, if I do this thing as a play in to out, let me make sure I'm on the mask here. So play this in to out, you'll see it can slide out and then slide back. So this allows me to create a mask that mirrors the movement that we have inside our animated title. And that is how I can keep different graphical elements sort of moving along with the slide in and slide out of the GT title. And so we save these out as two titles. One is just this mask title. And you'll notice that I put a black background in, and I needed that for the mask because the only thing I wanted to show through is the area that you see in white and the sort of faded areas on the side as it, sort of goes back to fully translucent or, fully opaque. So you have now this area that I can lay over another element in vMix, the vMix preset, to create that light effect all around the sides. And so we save that out as one GT title, and the other, we just turn those off and we put the other elements out, and that is the title that we have to use for the graphic itself. So hopefully that's clear. Let me, before we jump into the vMix preset itself, let's see if we have a few more comments here. So thank you. I apologize for my lack of foreign language skills, but I welcome you to the show. So thank you very much for joining us here. And Jesper, thank you for joining us, Jesper. Really appreciate it. Okay, so now let's jump over to the vMix preset, and we'll talk a little bit about how I put all of these elements together. So first, so we can see things, let me just activate the title that we have here, and I'll sort of go through all the different inputs that we have. So our first input is really just a stock video of Rockefeller Center in New York City at Christmas time, so I figured that was sort of an appropriate backdrop. Then I mentioned when we went through the GT title that we saved one of the titles out with all the graphical elements, and then we have the second title out with the mask elements. And so we have that set up here. Then for this fourth input, what I'm doing is I'm taking this video over here. I've just put this here so you could see it. If I sort of put this up here and play this, this is just sort of sparkling lights that sort of move and jitter around, so it creates that nice border effect. So I just have this here with a mask applied to it. So you now get this sort of nice ring of lights that can go around my object. And that's all I'm doing. So the way you set something up for a border is you go to color key, and down here where it says key fill input, this is basically where you can apply a mask. So all I'm doing is I'm saying, take the title, which is the mask, and apply that here. And now this title, when I animate it, it will be dynamic and it'll sort of do the whole slide and everything. And that gives you that nice effect with the lights along the edges here. So then what I do is I composite everything. So in this here, you can see I have the lights now that are composited in here around the edges. I have and I'm going to get to this next, I have sort of a Santa image in here of him like reading his list and handing out gifts. And then I have the title itself. And if you look at how we stack this, this is just the lights are in the background, which are masked out lights. Then I have the title in the middle. And then I have an overlay, which is the Santa video. And let me talk a bit about how that overlay is made up. So here in the input 6, sort of go through this, and let me turn off the mask for a second so you can just see. This is just a sort of a simple Santa type of video that we have here. And what I'm doing is I'm applying a layered key, which has two different elements to it. So my goal when I set this up, and we can sort of talk about what I was trying to achieve, I wanted to make it look, so if you look here, maybe this may be easier. Oh, sorry, wrong one. If you look here, what I wanted to appear like is that sort of this image of Santa is inside the bulb. So I made the basic video somewhat, applied some alpha to it so it was a little bit translucent so you could see all the different bulb elements on the outside with the gold stars. And then I put a mask around it. And the mask is composed of two different pieces. The first is a mask which creates an outside circle border. So if I look at this, and this may be a better way to see it, this is totally transparent. I don't even have an alpha in here. I just have this black border with a slight fade around the edges that says, in this case, I want you to block out Santa. I don't want to see any Santa outside that because I want to put this inside a circular ball. But I didn't want it to just be sort of this sort of edged thing. I wanted to create some more ephemeral look. So what I did is I also took this over here, which is just some smoke, and I applied this circle mask to the smoke, which if I sort of just play this smoke is in here now. And when it gets to the edge of the outside mask, you can hear this. You can sort of see it end. So it's a sort of a soft fade out, but with a clearly defined circle. And this now becomes the mask that I'm applying to the Santa video. So it's a two-piece mask. One is the smoke thing that I use, and the other is a frame around it. But if I were to take and just put the smoke mask with the circle mask applied to it, if I was just to stick that here, it wouldn't work. Even with flattening layers. So one of the things we talked about with vMix 28 is that you have the ability to do flatten layers, but when I did it, it didn't really do anything with to combine the two when I used it as a mask. So just something, I'm going to do a little more research on that. So in order to get around that, what I needed to do was I needed to create a mix input. And when I put them together in the mix, the output of that mix is a single composited video. So there are no layering elements to it to confuse the mask. So as opposed to using this as my mask inside the Santa video, I'm actually using this mix as my mask. So that's sort of the second element here to making this composite. Now, the other thing is I need the Santa to go away when everything else goes away and to appear when everything else appears. So what I have here is a second mix that I'm using, which has sort of, if I put this over here, it goes between, sort of, I can cut between nothing, which is a blank, you're not seeing anything, or the Santa in the mask. And so I can use that to place that over this bulb as I am fading it in and to remove it when I'm fading it out. And to do that, we needed I won't even call it scripting, though. We did it with sort of a start script dynamics inside of my shortcuts here. Oops, sorry about that. So let me go here and we'll go into shortcuts. And so I have basically these two little scripts, but what I'm going to do is let me switch over to Visual Studio Code so you can see it a little more clearly on a screen here. So for the script start, what I want to introduce is a shortcut we haven't used before, which is title begin animation. And so what we're doing here in these first two lines of code is we are starting the animation for both the graphical elements and for the mask at the same time. And the way this works is you actually tell it which animation do you want. You can have transition in or transition out. You can have page assignments. So anything you can do inside of the GT title animation, you can say that's the one I want you to execute with this title begin animation. And I'm just using the input. So this is for the graphic input and this is for the mask input. So that's just going to make that animation start. So when I do this, the graphic begins to come on screen and the mask is also coming on screen simultaneously. I'm waiting half a second for that bulb to appear because the Christmas bulb takes half a second to sort of zoom up, basically. You know, it does that sort of reveal coming from a small size to a larger size. And so we wait for that to complete. And then what I'm doing, same begin animations for the elements, the graphic elements and the mask. And we're just saying do the transition out now. And you can see that's changed in the value. So we're sleeping enough time to let the transition out happen. And then we just do a zoom fade out on the Santa so he sort of disappears down as the bulb goes away. And that gives us a sort of a nice clean fade out transition for the graphic. But you'll notice here that, you know, even though there are no elements inside of GT title that allow us to do video, we still have a lot of ways that we can sort of manipulate video elements outside of GT title and use layers to create this sort of dynamic graphical video elements that are part of our titles that we want to put on and have them animate on and animate off just like everything else. So it's not just sort of static layering or turning layers on and off, you know, without any sort of nice animated movement. So that's really what I wanted to cover here in the show. So let's see if we have anything else going on. All right, Michael. So you're asking for how we did the blinking lights. So that was with the mask that we had. So our mask we had for the GT title was applied to a video, which is just flashing lights. And that just created that nice thin border of lights around the element. And because the mask is animated, those lights are animated as well. So, Spatial, good to see you. Hope all is well with you. Thanks for joining. So, Richard, good to see you. Haven't talked in a while, so hope all is good out in Sacramento. Thanks for joining. Okay, so that's really everything. I do have a few more things we can talk about in our post show. So, hopefully, if you can stick around, that would be great. There's a few more things that I sort of wanted to share about more creative ways you can do things with masks for elements that you want to put on screen. But if you can't, we are planning to do one more show this year, probably prior to Christmas. And, I will post when that's coming up, but, obviously within the next few weeks. And, if you can't hang around for the post show, I will see you for that show. Otherwise, I will see you in a minute. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Hope to see you for the post show. Bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the post show. So I was told that we did have a slight interruption on the stream going out, but everything seemed to recover. So hopefully that wasn't too big of a dropout for everybody. But welcome to the post show. This is in many ways some of my favorite parts of the show because we get to talk about anything all of you want and so to go behind, some of the decisions we make when we put the show together. So, yeah, the masks that I create, Michael's just asking if I created the masks in Photoshop, and the answer is yes. I just did those all in Photoshop, so it was a pretty straightforward thing where I just basically create a circle, outline, feather it, then fill in black on the outside to create that circle. And I left the middle transparent and saved it as a transparent PNG that I can use then as our mask for that. So that's how we put all that together. But I think one of the other things is that when you are looking at creating masks, there are lots of different, you tend to think of these doing masks that are only black and white. So let me see if I can pull this over. I use story blocks as my, so hopefully it's going to let me in without I don't have my sign in or anything all set up. Okay, well, I wanted to show you something, but what I looked for is I just looked for, when I was originally doing the Santa element, I looked for different types of circle-based videos that I could use that would allow me to sort of create different, very dynamic masks. And these were just sort of animated elements that I was looking in this. So let's see, maybe I had something, just seeing if I can show you some things that were a little different here. No, I didn't really save any of them. But so what I found was that even if something has color elements in it, what you can do is you can actually take and just bring them in. And I believe what it's going to use is the luminance in the green channel to create a mask with this. So, for instance, one of the things I took in was a flickering candle on a dark background, basically. And I was able to take that flickering candle video loop and use that as a mask over some sort of snow winter scene. And what it ended up doing was it created in that candle outline with because it isn't a pure alpha channel, because it's not all like black or white, you got a lot of the detail, like the shadow detail of the candle and the flickering flame as the mask for the image that it was cutting out, that was applied to. And it means that when you start to think of different ways to do masks, it gives you more creativity around some of the options you have and combining things. And the other thing is that you doing masks and masks is a what we did here with the smoke and then with the hard circle. That's another great way to sort of create interesting masks that are very compatible with specific scenes that you want to create in a composited video. Because now you could use a traditional harder mask and then something like these, just smoke or other types of moving elements like snowfall or other things that you could do that have the, sort of cut out edges that you'd want to use inside of in a mask and create things that are, very, very artistic. I mean, it's not something I would definitely necessarily use as a normal mechanism, but when you're trying to create a specific effect, things like if you're doing weddings, or if you're doing even sports graphics where you want to have like the player, imagine where I did the Santa inside the bulb. That could be a player that you have as you put up player stats next to them, and you just have sort of fade in and mask around inside the some sort of box that you have for them. And you could have different flashing lights or other sort of motion graphics like a football field or a soccer pitch or whatever moving across in the background. So it gives you different ways to, the types of things you'd want to do for layering. And Michael just said, he has ideas for replicating the NFL touchdown celebration graphics. And yeah, that's just another thing where, they have a graphical element on the screen, they mask it out, layer them together in a composite. So Kyle Gunderman is saying that he has the same types of masks that he uses for, logos with basketball. So yeah, I think there are lots of different ways, but when you start to think of what can become a mask, if you stop thinking just black and white, literally black and white or just grayscales, it opens up a lot of possibilities. And you can start to look at just video itself that you may have and say, ooh, I could take and make this part of it a mask and have that animate and do something interesting with another video I have. So, okay. So, that was really everything here. I think one of the key things to take away from this is that you can create black and white animated graphics, or not just black and white, but like grayscale animated graphics inside GT Title that you could use for masks. And that could be something where you could create different types of effects you want to do reveals between a foreground and a background video, where you could make, take a checkerboard and sort of turn this off inside of GT Title, where it can become your mask, which takes a top image and sort of checkerboards it off to create a bottom image, things of that sort. So different ways to create more interesting titles, or smooth gradient type wipes, where you could go and say, I have a very smooth edge, which swipes between two videos on and off. So lots of interesting transition type effects that you can do with GT Title, using it to create masks and combining its animation capabilities. And because it's got timing inside of GT Title, not quite as good as a pure timeline layout, But the fact that I can assign times to different animation steps, it means that you could create fairly sophisticated transitions between videos. So another thing to think about as you sort of think of use cases for all of this. So Michael's asking how resource demanding these masks are. They do not appear to be resource intensive at all. I believe the masks are basically just a mathematical expression that's carried out on each frame, and it's a fairly, pixel math. It directly is fairly straightforward and doesn't require a lot of processing normally. So you could certainly do this without having any real issues in terms of performance. I think for like 12 inputs, I think you're saying there. Yeah, so it's 12 inputs. I don't think that would be an issue at all for you with doing masking. And again, it probably the bigger issue will be if you are doing animated masks and all of them are videos, you're playing back a lot of videos and then you're re-channeling those into other things. So that's the part that I'm not sure how much overhead would be involved in that. But if I've been able to play large numbers of videos concurrently inside of vMix, and I don't typically have an issue with that. The other thing is if you're not taking all the masks at the same, if you're not showing the images with all of the masks at the same time, I believe that vMix will sort of optimize what it does. So you're not going to be running that same high level processing on every single input. If it's runs out of processing power, it may turn around and sort of scale back the performance of things that aren't on screen. I believe that is how it works, but I'm not 100% positive. So you may find that if they're not all on screen at the same time, that even gives you, more of a cushion in terms of available processing. All right, then. I know this was kind of a short show today, but hopefully you found it useful. And also it was sort of, I want to do something at least in the spirit of the holiday season here. So I wanted to get in a little bit of Christmas on my side to do something in the show. So this was why we chose our specific lower third design for this. But I hope you all found it useful. And Michael, thank you. I'm glad you did find it interesting. But as I said, when we close out the main show, we will be doing one more show this year before Christmas. And I will post, when we have that ready. But I would love to see all of you. If I do not, please have a wonderful holiday, whatever you celebrate. And, I wish everyone the best coming into this season and going into the new year. So hopefully, though, we'll see you for our next show. Take care, everyone. Thanks.